A caf waitress agreed to a millionaire's fake marriage deal, but one sentence changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to tonight's main character. The rain drizzled over downtown Manhattan, drawing silver lines on the caf windows. Inside, the smell of roasted coffee beans mingled with soft jazz humming from the old speaker near the counter. It was close to midnight when Maya Collins wiped down the last table. Her apron smelled faintly of espresso and cinnamon. Her hands were red from the long shift, her sneakers damp from the puddles outside. A tall man sat alone in the corner booth, his charcoal suit crisp despite the late hour. He looked out of place here, surrounded by students and night shift workers. Maya thought he was waiting for someone. She grabbed the wrong ticket, thinking the latte with extra cinnamon was for his table. She walked over with a practiced smile. "Your double latte? Extra cinnamon?" she asked. The man looked up, confused. "I did not order that." Maya froze, her cheeks flushing. "Oh, my mistake. Sorry, I thought." He paused, then smiled faintly. "That is all right. I will take it anyway." His voice was calm, smooth, the kind that could silence a crowded room. She laughed nervously and placed the cup in front of him. As she turned away, he noticed the small rip on the edge of her sleeve and the way she straightened her shoulders, as if holding the world together. When she handed him the check later, he signed it quickly, his pen gliding in confident strokes. E. Reed. The name meant nothing to her. She folded the receipt and tucked it into her pocket absent-mindedly. Outside, the rain had grown heavier. Maya locked the caf, wrapped her jacket tight, and hurried toward the bus stop. She had no umbrella, just a cheap denim jacket and a phone buzzing with reminders she could not afford to face rent due, hospital bill overdue, notice from her landlord. That night, in her tiny apartment above a laundromat, she opened her worn wallet. $32 and a handful of coins. Her mother's medical papers lay scattered on the kitchen counter. She stared at them until her eyes blurred, then reached into her pocket for the crumpled caf receipt. "E. Reed," she murmured, tracing the signature with her thumb. She did not know why she kept it. Maybe because it reminded her of that moment when someone had looked at her without pity. 2 days later, the doorbell rang at the caf just before closing. Maya glanced up and froze. It was him, the same man in the dark suit, rain dripping from his shoulders. His expression was unreadable. "I need to speak with you," he said quietly. "It will sound strange, but hear me out." Maya's stomach tightened. "About the coffee?" she joked weakly. He shook his head. "About a deal. I need someone to play the role of my wife." The words hit like thunder. For a second she thought she misheard. "Excuse me?" He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a card. "Ethan Reed, CEO, Arcadia Group. I am offering you a contract," he said evenly. "A 6-month marriage, strictly business. You will be paid enough to cover your mother's hospital bills and more." Maya laughed in disbelief. "You cannot be serious." "I am," he replied. "And I think you are exactly the kind of person I can trust because you have nothing to gain from pretending." The caf went quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock and the rain against the glass. She stared at him, trying to read his face. His eyes were tired but sincere. It was madness, it was impossible, and yet something in his voice steady, solemn made her heart skip. He placed a blank check on the table between them. "Think about it," he said, "but not for too long." As he turned to leave, Maya looked down at the check, then at the receipt still tucked in her apron pocket. The same name, the same man. Outside, lightning flashed over the wet street, and in that brief light she saw her reflection in the glass-torn jacket, weary eyes, and the faint spark of something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. Maya did not sleep that night. The city hummed below her window, a restless sound that matched her own heartbeat. She kept staring at the business card on the table. Ethan Reed, CEO, Arcadia Group. The offer sounded insane, almost like something from a movie. But so was her life lately. The next morning she visited her mother at the hospital. The monitors beeped softly, and the air smelled of disinfectant. Her mother's voice was weak but kind. "Are you eating enough?" she asked. Maya smiled, hiding the fear behind her eyes. "I am fine, Mom. Everything will be fine." But when she stepped outside, the hospital clerk handed her another reminder of overdue payment. $3,000 by Friday. Otherwise, her mother would be transferred to a public ward. The paper trembled in Maya's hands. That night, she sat on her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling until dawn. At 7 in the morning, she was back at the caf, pouring coffee for early commuters. When the doorbell chimed, her chest tightened. Ethan Reed stood in the doorway, crisp suit, same calm eyes. He ordered a black coffee and waited silently until the crowd thinned. "Have you thought about my offer?" he asked. Maya laughed quietly, exhaustion in her tone. "You really were serious." "Completely," he replied. "I am offering you a way out. You sign a contract, we both get what we need." "What do you need?" she asked. He hesitated, then said, "My grandfather's company board demands I settle down before the next quarter. They do not trust a bachelor with full control. The engagement I had ended badly. I cannot risk another scandal. And what do I get? You get your mother's bills paid in full, a place to live, and financial security for 1 year." Maya crossed her arms. "You could choose anyone. Why me?" "Because you have no reason to betray me," he said simply. The directness stunned her. She looked down at the worn floor, the coffee stains on her apron, the calluses on her fingers. Then she whispered, "Show me the contract." Later that day, she stood inside the Arcadia Tower, 40 floors above the city she had only seen from the ground. The office gleamed with glass and marble. Ethan's assistant handed her a folder. Inside, 5 printed rules. The marriage would last 6 months. Public appearances together were required. No interference in each other's personal affairs. No physical intimacy. At the end of 6 months, both parties would sign for an amicable divorce. At the bottom, a line in blue ink. "Do not fall in love." Ethan had added it by hand. Maya almost smiled. "You really thought this through." "I like clarity," he said. She took the pen, her hand shaking slightly. "I am not the kind of woman who belongs in your world." "Maybe that is the point," he replied. Her signature looked small beneath his, thin lines on expensive paper. The sound of the pen clicking closed echoed through the silent office. That evening, Ethan's driver brought her to a penthouse overlooking Central Park. The view was breathtaking towers bathed in sunset light, the city stretching endless and golden. A team of stylists and planners were already waiting. They measured, adjusted, taught her how to walk in heels without tripping. She felt like an actress preparing for a role she had never wanted. When the last person left, Maya stood before the mirror, wearing a simple cream dress. For the first time in years, she looked like someone else, someone who might belong to another life. The reflection felt foreign and fragile. A soft knock broke the silence. Ethan stepped inside, his tie loosened, his gaze unreadable. "You did well today," he said quietly. "Is this how it feels to sell your soul?" she asked, half joking, half afraid. He looked at her reflection in the mirror. "No," he said after a pause. "It feels like rewriting it." Their eyes met in the glass. For a long second, the city noise faded away. Then he turned to leave. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start pretending." When the door closed, Maya let out a shaky breath. The contract lay folded on the dresser, the ink still drying beside his handwritten line. She traced the words, "Do not fall in love," with her finger, whispering to herself, "Easier said than done." The next morning began like a dream that did not belong to Maya. A black car waited outside the apartment, its engine humming softly. The driver opened the door with a polite nod. "Mrs. Reed," he said. The title felt heavy on her tongue. She stepped inside, clutching her small purse as if it were a shield. Ethan sat in the back seat, reading something on his tablet. He looked immaculate as always, every line of his suit perfectly pressed. "Good morning," he said without looking up. "Good morning," she replied, voice quiet. They rode in silence through the city streets. The skyscrapers gleamed above them, cold and majestic. Maya caught her reflection in the tinted window, a girl wearing borrowed elegance. She still felt like the waitress from the corner cafe, pretending to be someone else's story. At the courthouse, the ceremony was swift. 2 witnesses, a notary, and a clerk who barely looked up as they signed the marriage certificate. The pen trembled in her hand when she wrote her name beside Ethan's. He glanced at her and said softly, "It is only paper, Maya." But when he slipped the ring on her finger, the metal felt too real, too cold to be pretend. The driver brought them straight to the Arcadia residence, a mansion of glass and stone perched on the Upper East Side. The doors opened into a grand foyer with marble floors, chandeliers, and walls lined with art that probably cost more than her entire neighborhood. The air smelled of roses and something expensive she could not name. A housekeeper greeted her with a bow. "Welcome home, Mrs. Reed." Home. The word felt foreign. Maya looked up the sweeping staircase and whispered, "Thank you." Ethan turned to her. "You will have your own room on the second floor. Dinner is at 7. There will be people here tonight. Smile, answer politely, and say as little as possible." "Is that an order?" she asked. "It is advice," he said. Then he walked away, already on the phone, already back in his world. Upstairs, her room was large enough to make her dizzy. A king-sized bed, silk sheets, and a window that overlooked the city skyline. On the dressing table lay a jewelry box, a phone, and a list of scheduled events she was expected to attend. Her name printed neatly beside his, Mr. and Mrs. Reed. When evening came, the house filled with laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses. Maya stood beside Ethan as photographers snapped pictures. He placed a hand on her back, light and controlled, guiding her through the crowd. "Relax," he murmured between smiles. "They can smell fear." She forced a small laugh. "I am trying." An older woman in pearls approached, her tone sharp. "So this is the lovely bride. You certainly wasted no time, Ethan." Maya offered a polite nod. "It happened quickly, ma'am." The woman's eyes flicked over her dress, her posture, her accent. "Indeed." Ethan's smile never faltered. "Mrs. Collins has an honest charm. That is hard to find in this city." The tension broke like a thin thread. Maya felt his fingers press gently against her back, steadying her. She glanced up at him, and for a brief moment, their eyes met his filled with quiet warning but also something protective. Later, when the guests left and the lights dimmed, Maya slipped off her heels and stood by the window. The city glowed below, alive and endless. She heard the faint click of the door behind her. Ethan's voice came softly. "You handled yourself well tonight." "I almost spilled wine on your investor," she said, half smiling. He laughed under his breath. "Almost does not count." For the first time, she heard warmth in his tone. It startled her more than his laughter. "I will try to do better," she said. "You already are," he replied. Silence lingered between them, the kind that carried meaning without words. Then he looked at her hand, at the ring reflecting the city lights. "You should know," he said, "people will watch us closely. The act must look real." Maya met his gaze. "And if it starts to feel real?" He hesitated, then turned toward the door. "Do not let it." When he was gone, Maya looked back at the skyline. Her reflection shimmered in the glass, framed by gold light and quiet doubt. The ring caught the glow like a secret. Somewhere deep down, she already knew pretending was never going to be easy. Days turned into weeks, and Maya's life followed a rhythm she could barely recognize. Every morning began with a schedule delivered to her door. Meetings, charity luncheons, board events, dinners. Her name was printed on every invitation beside his. Mr. and Mrs. Ethan Reed. The transformation was almost surreal. The girl who once poured coffee for minimum wage now wore designer dresses and smiled for flashing cameras. But beneath the perfect curls and flawless makeup, her heart still raced each time she had to speak. Ethan's world was polished, sharp, and merciless. One wrong glance could become a headline. One afternoon, as she struggled to balance a crystal glass at a corporate brunch, Ethan leaned closer and whispered, "Relax your shoulders. Breathe. You belong here more than half of them." His tone carried no mockery, only calm assurance. She followed his advice, lifting her chin slightly. A reporter snapped a photo at that very moment, catching the faint curve of her smile and the steady hand resting at her back. Later, as they sat in the car leaving the event, Maya said quietly, "You make it look easy." Ethan glanced at her. "It is not. You just get used to pretending." She looked out the window. "You mean living?" He did not answer. But when their eyes met in the reflection of the glass, she saw something flicker: tiredness, maybe loneliness. That evening, Maya wandered into the library while waiting for dinner. The room smelled of old books and cedar. On one shelf stood a framed photograph of a younger Ethan with an older man. Both wore matching smiles. "That was my father," Ethan said from the doorway. She jumped, startled. He stepped closer, his expression softer than usual. "He built Arcadia from nothing. I was 20 when he died. The board wanted to sell everything. I fought to keep it." Maya turned toward him. "You won." "At a price," he said quietly. "Now they want proof that I can protect the company long term. Marriage looks stable to them. It calms investors. So I am your insurance policy," she said with a hint of bitterness. He smiled faintly, a very convincing one. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. A quick exchange with his assistant brought the old distance back to his eyes. "Dinner is ready," he said, returning to his formal tone. During dinner, they sat across a long table set for 12. The candles flickered between them. Maya picked at her food, too aware of the silence. Finally, she said, "I do not understand how you live like this. Everything looks perfect but feels empty." He looked up from his plate. "Perfection is a habit, not a feeling." Her chest tightened. "That sounds lonely." He did not deny it. The next morning, Ethan was gone before sunrise. A note sat on the counter. "Meeting in Chicago, back Friday. Take the weekend to rest." With the house quiet, Maya found herself drawn to the piano in the living room. Her mother had taught her when she was little, before life became about bills and survival. Her fingers trembled as they touched the keys, then remembered. The melody was soft, unsure, but full of warmth. She did not hear Ethan enter when he returned early that afternoon. He stood by the door, watching her play. When she finished, he said, "You never told me you could do that." She turned, embarrassed. "It has been years. I just wanted to remember something that felt real." He crossed the room, stopping beside the piano. "You do not have to try so hard to fit in, Maya. You already belong here. Maybe more than I do." The words caught her off guard. For the first time, she saw not the CEO who had hired her, but a man who looked human, someone carrying the weight of too many expectations. Their eyes met, and silence filled the space between them. It was not the silence of strangers anymore. It was the silence that comes before something begins. Maya looked down, her heart racing. "The contract says no falling in love," she murmured. Ethan smiled faintly. "Good thing we are both terrible at following rules." The following week, Arcadia Group hosted its annual charity gala at the Metropolitan Hotel. The ballroom shimmered under golden chandeliers, filled with executives, investors, and reporters. It was Maya's first major public appearance as Ethan's wife, and every step she took felt like walking on glass. Her stylist had spent hours perfecting her look. The silver gown hugged her frame, subtle but elegant, and her hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. Yet beneath the glamour, her palms were sweating. As they arrived, flashes from cameras painted the room in bursts of white. Ethan placed a steady hand on her back and leaned closer. "Remember what I told you," he murmured. "Smile, stay calm, and do not let them see fear." Maya nodded, her throat dry. "I will try." Inside, the event buzzed with polished laughter and champagne glasses clinking. Ethan greeted people effortlessly, shaking hands, answering questions, every movement rehearsed like a dance he had mastered long ago. Maya followed his lead, repeating the phrases he had taught her. A journalist from a lifestyle magazine approached with a smile too sharp to be friendly. "Mrs. Reed," she began, "everyone is fascinated by your story. Tell us, what is the secret to capturing New York's most unattainable bachelor?" Maya blinked, unsure how to respond. Ethan's gaze flicked toward her, calm but watchful. Then she heard herself say, softly but clear enough for the microphone, "Maybe he just needed someone who looked at him and saw a man, not a millionaire." The crowd nearby fell silent for a second. Cameras clicked. Ethan froze for a fraction of a moment, then his hand tightened gently on hers. He smiled to the reporter. "That is exactly what I needed," he said, his voice low, steady, and warm. The journalist laughed awkwardly, retreating to find her next headline. But Ethan's expression had changed. He looked at Maya not as an actor in a contract, but as someone who had seen through the layers of his guarded life. Later that night, after the last guest left and the music faded, Maya stepped onto the hotel balcony to catch her breath. The city lights stretched endlessly below. Ethan joined her, loosening his tie. "You surprised me tonight," he said quietly. "I did not mean to," she answered. "I just spoke the truth." "That is what made it dangerous," he said with a small smile. "The truth always changes things." The wind lifted her hair, and for a moment, the world felt still. They stood side by side, neither speaking. The noise of the city blurred into a hum far below them. When Ethan finally spoke again, his tone was softer. "I used to think control was everything, that if I managed every risk, nothing could hurt me. But then you walked in with the wrong cup of coffee and ruined all of that." Maya laughed under her breath. "I ruin a lot of things." He turned to her. "Not this time." For a heartbeat, it felt as if the world had narrowed to just the two of them. His hand brushed hers. She did not pull away. The moment stretched, fragile and real. Then his phone buzzed. The spell broke. He looked at the screen, his jaw tightening. "I have to take this," he said, stepping aside. Maya listened to the brief exchange, corporate talk, figures, strategy, and felt the distance between them return. When he came back, the warmth in his eyes was replaced by exhaustion. "I am sorry," he said. Work never sleeps. I understand, she replied. But deep down, she knew understanding did not make it hurt less. On the drive home, they sat in silence. The lights from passing cars flickered across Ethan's face, highlighting the man who lived between two worlds: public perfection and private chaos. Maya stared out the window, the echo of her own words repeating in her head. He just needed someone who saw a man, not a millionaire. She wondered if he had really heard her, or if, like everything else in his world, it was only temporary. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows of the penthouse, but it brought no warmth. The gala had left echoes in Maya's mind. Her words had spread across headlines overnight. Waitress wife melts the cold CEO, one article said. Another called her the heart behind Arcadia's Ice King. Every notification on her phone was a new story twisting what she had said. When she came downstairs, Ethan was already at the dining table, scrolling through messages on his tablet. His expression was unreadable, jaw tense. "Good morning," she said softly. He looked up, eyes sharp. "You made the front page." Maya froze. "I did not mean to—" "I know," he interrupted, his tone softer. "But the media does not care about meaning. They only care about noise." He sighed, placing the tablet down. "We will handle it." She sat across from him, the silence thick between them. "Are you angry?" "No," he said after a pause, "just reminded of how fragile everything is." Later that day, she watched him in a meeting with his team. His voice carried confidence, authority, the same flawless rhythm she had grown used to. Yet every time his eyes flicked toward her, there was something different: hesitation, maybe fear. That night the rain returned, tapping against the windows like restless fingers. Maya stood by the piano, letting her hand rest on the keys but not playing. She could feel the weight of the contract more than ever. She whispered to herself, "Do not fall in love." Behind her, Ethan spoke quietly. "You are talking to yourself again." She turned, startled. "You are back early." He smiled faintly. "Meetings were unbearable without you causing trouble." Maya laughed softly, shaking her head. "You make me sound like chaos." "Maybe you are," he said. "But lately, I have started to think I needed that." He poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to her. They stood side by side near the window, watching the rain blur the city lights. "Do you ever miss the person you were before all this?" she asked. "Every day," he said quietly. "But I built this life to survive. Sometimes I forget how to live in it." His honesty caught her off guard. "Then why keep pretending?" "Because the truth costs more than I can afford," he said. She looked down at her glass. "You are wrong. Sometimes, the truth is the only thing that saves you." He met her eyes, the silence stretching between them again. The air was thick with the kind of tension that was no longer awkward, but heavy with meaning. "Do you regret saying yes?" he asked suddenly. Maya hesitated. "I do not know. Some nights I wish I never signed that paper. But then there are moments like this when it feels like maybe I did not make a mistake." Ethan's gaze softened. He set his glass down. "I used to think emotions made people weak, but lately, I think the opposite. You make me want to feel again, Maya." The words hung in the air. She felt them sink deep, trembling like the final note of a song. "You should not say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" he asked, stepping closer. "We are already breaking half the rules." Her heart pounded. She took a step back, her voice barely steady. "Because when this ends, it will hurt." Ethan stopped, his expression unreadable. Then he said softly, "Maybe that is what makes it real." For a long moment they stood in silence, the city flickering below them. Then the thunder rolled across the sky, and the power flickered out. Darkness filled the room except for the faint glow of the streetlights. Maya could hear his breathing close to hers. "Do not be afraid," he murmured. "I am not," she said. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Outside, the rain fell harder, and for the first time since the contract began, neither of them remembered which parts of their story were real and which were pretend. The storm outside had passed by morning, but the one inside the house was just beginning. When Maya came down to breakfast, the staff was whispering, their faces pale. A newspaper lay open on the counter. Her heart sank the moment she saw it. Across the front page was a headline that made her stomach twist. "Fake Marriage Scandal. CEO Ethan Reed and Waitress Wife Exposed." Underneath, photos from the gala showed her and Ethan holding hands, smiling, laughing, the perfect couple, but the article told a different story. It claimed the marriage was a publicity stunt, a strategic move to manipulate shareholders. Someone had leaked the contract. She felt the blood drain from her face. "Ethan," she whispered. He appeared in the doorway moments later, phone pressed to his ear, his voice sharp. "Find out who did it. I want every file traced, every employee checked." He ended the call and turned toward her. For once the calm in his eyes was gone. "They know," she said quietly. "Yes," he replied, his tone clipped. "The board will call an emergency meeting in an hour. They want explanations. Will they believe you?" "Not if I cannot contain this." Maya stared at the paper again. The words fake marriage burned into her vision. "It was supposed to be business," she said, her voice trembling. "But now it feels like they are tearing something real apart." Ethan stepped closer. "You did nothing wrong, Maya. This is my mess. I will fix it." But before he could say more, the intercom buzzed. His assistant's voice came through. "Sir, the shareholders have arrived." Ethan adjusted his tie, the steel returning to his posture. "Stay here," he said. "No," she replied, lifting her chin. "I am part of this too." Inside the boardroom, the air was cold and heavy with judgment. Men in suits sat around a polished table, their expressions hard. The chairman, an older man with silver hair, spoke first. "Mr. Reed, care to explain why Arcadia's reputation is being dragged through the tabloids?" Ethan kept his tone measured. "This story is false. Our marriage is genuine." One of the executives snorted. "Convenient. Yet somehow, the press obtained a copy of a 6-month contract with both your signatures." Maya felt every eye turn toward her. Her voice wavered, but she forced herself to speak. "The contract was real, but so was what happened after. None of you saw him when he was not pretending. None of you saw who he really is." The room fell silent. Ethan's gaze met hers, full of shock and something like gratitude. The chairman leaned back. "Whether real or not, the scandal has cost us millions. To protect Arcadia, we recommend you step down temporarily." Ethan did not argue. He simply nodded, understood. When they left the building, cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted questions. Ethan shielded her with his arm, guiding her into the car. Inside, silence hung between them. "You should not have spoken," he said softly. "They will use your words against you." "I could not stay quiet," she replied. "If this ends, I want it to end with honesty." He looked out the window, his reflection fractured by the rain. "Honesty is the one thing my world never forgives." Back at the penthouse, the weight of what had happened settled over them. Ethan removed his tie and tossed it aside. "They will expect me to issue a statement tomorrow," he said. "They will want me to call this marriage a misunderstanding." Maya's voice broke. "And will you?" He hesitated. "If it saves the company? Yes." The answer hit harder than she expected. She nodded slowly. "Then I guess the contract is over." Ethan turned, his eyes pained. "Maya." But she was already walking away, the sound of her footsteps fading down the hall. Outside, the city lights flickered through the rain, and for the first time, the penthouse felt empty. 3 weeks passed. The world had moved on, but the headlines still echoed in every corner of Maya's mind. She left the penthouse quietly one morning, taking nothing except a small suitcase and a letter she never sent. She found a job at a small cafe in Brooklyn, pouring coffee again, wiping tables, listening to the familiar sound of spoons against porcelain. It was strange how life had circled back to where it started, except this time her heart felt heavier. She had stopped reading the news, but one evening, as she locked up the cafe, the television above the counter caught her attention. The headline read, "Ethan Reed speaks out for the first time." The image showed him standing behind a podium, the Arcadia logo gleaming behind him. The crowd of reporters buzzed as he began to speak. "3 weeks ago," he said, "a story broke that questioned not only my integrity but the honesty of someone who did nothing wrong. I want to make something clear. Maya Collins did not deceive me. I deceived myself. I believed that contracts and rules could replace trust. I was wrong." Maya froze, the keys trembling in her hand. On the screen, Ethan continued, his voice steady but emotional. "Arcadia will survive without me. I am stepping down as CEO effective immediately. But before I go, there is one more truth I need to share. The marriage that began as an agreement became the most real thing I have ever known." The cafe was silent. Maya's coworker whispered, "Is that your husband?" But Maya could not answer. Her throat tightened, her heart pounding as if it remembered every word he had ever said. The next day, a car pulled up outside the cafe just as she was about to close. Rain had begun to fall again, soft and familiar. When the door opened, she did not need to look up. She knew the sound of his footsteps. Ethan stood in the doorway, his hair damp, his eyes tired but clear. "You really do have a habit of disappearing when I need you most," he said quietly. Maya stared at him, stunned. "Why are you here? You should be fixing your company." He shook his head. "I already fixed what mattered. I told the truth." She crossed her arms, trying to steady herself. "And what happens now? You think a speech changes everything?" "No," he said, stepping closer. "But I hoped it might bring me here to say what I should have said before." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. Inside was the framed CAF receipt, the one she had given him the first night they met. Her handwriting was still faintly visible. "E-read, Table 7. You kept this?" she asked softly. "I never threw it away," he said. "It reminded me of who I was before the contracts and the titles. Before I lost you." Maya felt her eyes burn. "Why show me this now?" "Because I do not have anything else left to offer except the truth," he said. "I told the world what you meant to me. Now I am telling you." For a long moment, the rain filled the silence between them. Then she stepped forward and whispered, "Do you know what you sound like?" He smiled faintly. "A fool." "No," she said. "Someone real." Ethan exhaled, relief flickering across his face. "Then maybe we can start over. No deals, no deadlines, just us." Maya looked down at the framed receipt, then back at him. "Some mistakes," she said, "are worth repeating." Outside, the rain eased into a soft drizzle, and for the first time in weeks, the city felt quiet again. A year later, the CAF looked different. The walls were brighter, the tables newer, and a sign above the counter read, "The First Order Coffee with Purpose." Maya had bought the place with help from a foundation Ethan created after stepping away from Arcadia. Together, they turned the small CAF into a space that trained single parents and students who needed a second chance. Every cup sold helped someone start over. On a quiet Sunday morning, the air was filled with the smell of cinnamon and roasted beans. Maya stood behind the counter, arranging flowers in a glass vase when Ethan walked in. He wore a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled up, a far cry from the CEO who once hid behind his suits. "Morning, Mrs. Reed," he said, his voice teasing but gentle. She smiled without looking up. "I thought we agreed not to call each other that at work." He leaned against the counter. "You started this place. You make the rules. And you still find ways to bend them," she said, finally meeting his eyes. He grinned. "Old habits die hard." She handed him a coffee cup with a heart drawn in the foam. "Your usual." He took a sip, then placed a small velvet box on the counter. Maya stared at it, her hands frozen. "Ethan, what is that?" He opened it slowly, revealing the same silver ring from their contract marriage, only this time. The inside was engraved with a single line. "No contracts, just love." Her breath caught. "You kept it all this time." "I kept everything," he said. "The ring, the receipt, the memory of you walking into my life with the wrong cup of coffee. Every mistake led me back here." The CAF door chimed as a few customers entered, but the world around them faded. Ethan took her hand. "Maya Collins Reed," he said softly. "This time, I am not asking for 6 months. I am asking for forever." Her eyes glistened. "You already have it," she whispered. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and applause broke out from the staff and customers who had quietly gathered around. The bell above the door rang again as sunlight poured through the windows, scattering gold across the room. Ethan looked around the CAF and then back at her. "Do you ever think about how it all started?" She smiled. "A wrong order, a fake contract, and one very real love." He laughed. "Remind me never to doubt destiny again." They stood together behind the counter, the city humming beyond the glass, the framed CAF receipt still hanging on the wall beside the register. Underneath it, a small sign read, "Some mistakes are meant to last forever." And for the first time, their story was no longer written in ink or contract clauses. It was written in every heartbeat, every shared smile, and every cup of coffee that began with love.